I'm done settling for less.
Yeah. 15 billion. You pulled it off. Keep my name out of the announcement for now.
You had all of this?
You never cared enough to ask.
She slid the ring across the table like it was something cheap she had borrowed and no longer needed. It spun once under the soft glow of the restaurant lights, drawing just enough attention for nearby tables to fall quiet. Lauren Whitmore didn't look back as she stood, slipping her hand into Victor Hale's arm, as if she had already erased the man she was leaving behind. To her, it was the end of a mistake. To everyone watching, Ethan Sterling was just a quiet husband who had been publicly replaced. What none of them knew was that 3 days earlier, Ethan had signed a $15 billion oil deal in a Houston boardroom, one that put his name behind power none of them could imagine, and somehow he looked completely calm. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 3 days earlier, nothing about Ethan's life looked different on the surface. At the table, the silence stretched longer than anyone expected. The soft clink of silverware from across the room felt louder now. Lauren didn't sit back down. She didn't hesitate. She simply walked away, heels steady, posture straight, as if she had rehearsed this moment long before it happened. Victor followed half a step behind her, confident, polished, already belonging to her world in a way Ethan never had. Margaret Whitmore watched them leave with a small, satisfied expression she didn't bother hiding. Brandon Whitmore stared into his glass, lips pressed tight, as if the outcome had always been inevitable. No one moved to stop it. No one looked at Ethan with sympathy. They looked at him the way people look at something that has just confirmed what they already believed. Ethan sat there for a few seconds after they were gone. Not frozen, not shocked, just still. He reached into his jacket and picked up the ring from where it had stopped spinning. He turned it once between his fingers, then slipped it into his pocket with careful precision, as if it still deserved respect even if the moment didn't. A waiter approached cautiously, unsure whether to interrupt. "Would you like anything, sir?" Ethan looked up, his expression calm, almost detached. "Just the check," he said. His voice didn't shake. That was the part that unsettled people who had been watching. Not anger, not humiliation, just control. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Traffic lights changed. Cars passed, conversations continued. Ethan stepped onto the sidewalk and paused for a moment, letting the cool air settle around him. Then he took out his phone. There were 2 missed calls, one from Olivia Lawson, one from a number he didn't recognize, but he knew exactly where it came from. He stared at the screen for a second longer than necessary, then slipped the phone back into his pocket without returning either call. Not yet. Across the street, a black car idled for a moment before pulling away. Ethan barely noticed it. His focus wasn't on what people could see. It was on what they couldn't. Inside the restaurant, Margaret leaned toward Brandon. "Well," she said quietly, "that went exactly as it should have." Brandon didn't respond. He kept his eyes on the table, as if something about Ethan's silence hadn't sat right with him. Margaret didn't notice, or maybe she chose not to. To her, Ethan had always been temporary, a placeholder, a mistake Lauren had finally corrected. Ethan walked to his car alone. It wasn't new, it wasn't impressive. It fit perfectly into the version of him everyone believed in. He got in, closed the door, and sat there for a moment without starting the engine. The ring felt heavier in his pocket than it should have, not because of what it cost, but because of what it represented. 6 years of a marriage that had never really been about him. 6 years of being measured, adjusted, and quietly judged. 6 years of being underestimated. He leaned back slightly and closed his eyes for a brief second. Not to escape, to think clearly. When he opened them again, his expression hadn't changed. He started the car. As he pulled onto the road, his phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. Then again. This time, he glanced at it. Olivia Lawson. He let it ring for 2 seconds, 3. Then he picked it up. "Ethan," she said, her voice precise and controlled. "We need to talk about the Houston agreement. There's movement on their side, faster than expected." "I figured there would be," he replied. There was a pause on the line. "Are you in a place where you can discuss this?" she asked. Ethan glanced at the road ahead. the steady flow of headlights stretching into the distance. "I am now," he said. He didn't mention the dinner. He didn't mention Lauren. He didn't mention the ring sitting in his pocket. On the other end, Olivia exhaled quietly, as if confirming something to herself. "Good," she said. "Because once this goes public, it changes everything." Ethan didn't answer right away. He already knew that. What he didn't say was that everything had already changed, just not in the way anyone at that table understood. "Send me the updated documents," he said. "I already did," she replied. "Check your email." "And Ethan?" He waited. "You handled tonight." There was a brief silence. "I handled it," he said. He ended the call before she could ask anything else. The road stretched ahead, steady and uninterrupted. Behind him, a life had just ended in the most public way possible. Ahead of him, something far larger was already in motion, and no one, not Lauren, not her family, not even Victor, had any idea what they had just walked away from. Ethan drove for nearly 20 minutes before he realized he had taken the same turn twice. The city blurred into something repetitive. Streetlights, gas stations, quiet intersections that didn't ask questions. He let the road decide for him for a while, not because he was lost, but because he didn't need to be anywhere specific yet. When he finally pulled into his driveway, the house looked exactly the same. Clean, quiet, or still. Nothing about it suggested that a marriage had just ended in public. He sat in the car for a moment longer, hands resting lightly on the wheel. The porch light was on. Lauren had left it on earlier that evening before they went to dinner, a small habit. Automatic, thoughtless. He turned off the engine. Inside, the air felt unchanged. Her perfume lingered faintly near the hallway. A glass sat in the sink, half-rinsed. A jacket she had tried on and rejected earlier was still draped over a chair. For a second, it all looked temporary, like she might walk back in and continue the evening as if nothing had happened. He knew better. Ethan walked into the kitchen and placed his keys down in the same spot he always did. The ring stayed in his pocket. He didn't take it out again. His phone buzzed once more on the counter. Olivia Lawson. He let it ring out this time. Instead, he opened his laptop and sat down at the kitchen table. The screen lit up softly, reflecting in his eyes as he pulled up the email she had mentioned earlier. There it was. A subject line that would have looked ordinary to anyone else. Updated agreement, Meridian Energy Partners. He opened it without hesitation. Numbers filled the screen, structured, precise, cold in the way large numbers always were. Projected yield, equity percentages, distribution timelines, legal language layered over financial certainty. Ethan read it slowly, not because he didn't understand it, but because he wanted to confirm something, that this was real, that this existed independently of what had just happened, or that the life he had built in quiet spaces, far from dinner tables and social expectations, had not been touched by any of it. He scrolled to the section that mattered most. His name was there, not highlighted, not emphasized, or just present. That was enough. He leaned back slightly, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Not relief, not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Then his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Olivia, Lauren. He stared at the name on the screen for a few seconds. It rang once, twice, then stopped. A message followed. "We need to talk." Ethan didn't open it right away. He already knew the tone, the shift. Not regret yet. Not fully, but something close. He turned the phone face down and looked back at the laptop. There was another email beneath Olivia's, from a Houston number he had saved under a different name. Arthur Kane. The message was short. "We're moving faster than expected. Board wants confirmation tomorrow. Need your approval." Ethan read it twice. That was new. He hadn't expected the timeline to compress this quickly. The agreement had been signed, yes, but operational authority, real authority, came in phases. Layers of verification, internal approvals, legal checkpoints. This was earlier than planned. He closed the laptop halfway, then stopped. No, he opened it again and began reading the attached documents in full. If the board wanted confirmation, they would get it properly, not rushed, not careless. He reached for a pen and made a few notes on a pad beside him. Small things, clarifications, adjustments, questions that needed answers before anything moved forward. The same way he had always worked, carefully, thoroughly, without noise. His phone buzzed again, Lauren, then again and again. He ignored all of them. Minutes passed, then nearly an hour. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, the only sound was the occasional tap of his pen and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Ethan finally closed the laptop fully and stood. He walked upstairs slowly, each step deliberate. The bedroom door was open. The bed was neatly made, untouched since that morning. Her side of the closet was half open. Clothes missing. Not all of them. Just enough to suggest she hadn't planned to come back tonight. That made sense. He stepped inside and looked around once, not searching for anything, just taking in the space as it was now. Different, not broken, just different. He turned off the light and stepped back into the hallway. As he walked downstairs again, his phone buzzed one more time. This time, he picked answer, just to look. A new message, not from Lauren. From Olivia. Call me now. Ethan held the phone in his hand for a moment, then answered. Something changed, she said immediately. No greeting, no hesitation. I assumed it might, he replied. You're listed in the preliminary filing, she continued. Not public yet, but it will be. Within 48 hours, maybe less. Ethan didn't speak. The board moved your position up, she said. You're not just a stakeholder anymore. They're assigning operational oversight for the initial phase. That puts your name on everything. He walked slowly back into the kitchen and leaned one hand against the counter. How visible? He asked. Visible enough that anyone who knows where to look will find you, Olivia said. And people in Lauren's circle, they know where to look. Ethan's gaze shifted to the window. The reflection staring back at him looked exactly like the man they had dismissed. Same face, same posture, same quiet presence. Nothing about him had changed, except the part no one had bothered to see. I'll review the final documents tonight, he said. Send me anything new as it comes in. I already have, she replied. Then her tone shifted just slightly. Ethan, once this hits, you don't control who finds out, I know. Then you need to decide what you're doing before they do. He didn't answer right away. Upstairs, the empty space where Lauren's things had been felt heavier than it should have. Down here, numbers and contracts were moving faster than expected. Two worlds, both shifting. Only one of them had ever really been real. I'll call you in the morning, he said finally. He ended the call before she could respond. The kitchen fell silent again. Ethan stood there for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and took out the ring. He looked at it once more. Then he set it down on the table. Not as something to hold on to, not as something to return, just as something that no longer decided anything for him. His phone buzzed again. Lauren. He stared at the name. This time he opened the message. Where are you? We need to figure this out. Ethan read it once. Then he typed a single response. We will, through attorneys. He hit send before he could reconsider it. A small boundary, but a clear one. The phone stayed in his hand for a second longer. Then another message appeared. From a number he didn't recognize. Houston area code, board confirmation scheduled. We need your signature before morning. Ethan's eyes didn't move. The room felt smaller somehow. Not because of pressure, because of timing. He looked at the laptop, then at the phone, then back at the message. Everything was moving faster now, and for the first time since the dinner, the calm on his face shifted just slightly. Not into fear, into decision. He picked up the phone, and this time he didn't hesitate. Lauren didn't sleep that night. She told herself it was because of the way the evening had ended. Too public, too final. The image of the ring spinning on the table kept replaying in her mind, sharper than she expected. It wasn't guilt, exactly. Not yet. It was discomfort, the kind that came when something didn't land the way it was supposed to. She had imagined a cleaner break, something decisive, controlled. Instead, Ethan had made it. Quiet, too quiet. By morning, she was sitting in Victor Hale's apartment, wrapped in a robe that wasn't hers, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The skyline outside the window stretched wide and expensive, the kind of view that had always felt like a promise. Victor moved around the kitchen like he belonged to it, confident, unbothered. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He didn't need to. To him, the situation was already resolved. You did what you had to do, he said casually, pouring himself another drink. Dragging it out would have been worse. Lauren nodded, but the motion felt automatic. Her phone sat on the counter beside her. Ethan's message still open. We will, through attorneys. That wasn't how this was supposed to go. She had expected resistance. Or maybe anger. Something emotional she could push against, justify, reshape into proof that she had made the right decision. Instead, he had stepped aside, cleanly, like he had already accepted it. Victor glanced at her phone and smirked slightly. He's trying to play it calm, he said. Men like that always do, at first. Give it a few days. Lauren didn't respond. She wasn't sure that was true. Ethan had always been calm. That was part of the problem. It was also the part she had never been able to read. Victor walked over and leaned against the counter across from her. "You'll feel better once everything's finalized," he added. "Right now, it's just paperwork. Paperwork." Lauren let the word sit in her mind for a second longer than it should have. Her gaze drifted back to the phone. Something about his response had unsettled her. Not the words themselves. The absence behind them. The lack of urgency. The lack of reaction. It felt like he had already moved on. That didn't make sense. Ethan didn't have anything to move on to, did he? She set the cup down and picked up her phone, opening his message again. Then she scrolled up. Their last few exchanges. Short, fictional, distant. Had it always been like this, or had she stopped noticing? Victor was talking again. Something about scheduling, about how they could handle the next few weeks, about the optics of the situation. His voice blended into the background. Lauren wasn't listening anymore. Instead, she was remembering small things. Ethan reading late at night without saying much. The way he would leave for trips without making it a production. The way he never asked for anything, even when she knew he should have. She had always interpreted that as a lack of ambition, a lack of presence. But now, sitting here, she wasn't entirely sure. "Lauren," Victor said, sharper this time. She blinked and looked up. "What?" "I said we should get ahead of this," he repeated. "Talk to your attorney today. Start the process. You don't want him dragging it out. Lauren almost said something. Almost told him that Ethan didn't seem like someone who would drag anything out. Instead, she nodded. "I'll call someone." Victor smiled slightly, satisfied, and went back to his drink. Lauren stood up and walked toward the window, phone still in her hand. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. Cars, people, noise at a distance. Everything looked the same, but something had shifted. She didn't have the words for it yet, only the feeling. Later that afternoon, she met her mother. Margaret Whitmore was already seated when Lauren arrived. Posture perfect, expression composed in the way it always was when she was about to deliver a verdict. Brandon sat beside her, scrolling through his phone, only half paying attention. Lauren took her seat across from them. "Margaret, I assume it's done," she said. Lauren nodded once. "Yes." Margaret exhaled, slow and measured. "Good, it was overdue." Brandon glanced up briefly, offering a small nod of approval, before returning to whatever he had been looking at. "Now we handle it properly," Margaret continued. "No delays, no emotional backtracking, clean separation." Lauren rested her hands lightly on the table. "He said we'd go through attorneys." Margaret smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course he did. That's what men like him do when they realize they've lost." Lauren hesitated. Men like him. The phrase landed differently now. "He didn't seem," she started, then stopped. Margaret's gaze sharpened. "Didn't seem what?" "Upset," she said finally. Brandon let out a short laugh. "Give it time." Margaret shook her head slightly. "No, he'll process it later. Quiet types always do. They think they're being dignified, but it's just delayed reaction." Lauren nodded again, but the explanation didn't settle. It felt too simple, too convenient. Margaret leaned forward slightly. "The important thing is that you don't let him complicate this. You've already given him more time than he deserved." That part Lauren didn't question, or at least she didn't argue. "Do we know what he actually has?" Brandon asked casually, still looking at his phone. "Assets, I mean. Anything worth worrying about?" Margaret dismissed it with a small wave of her hand. "Nothing significant. The house is the only thing of note, and we'll handle that." Lauren's attention snapped slightly at that. "The house?" she repeated. Margaret glanced at her. "Yes. It was purchased during the marriage. It's a shared asset." Lauren opened her mouth to respond, then paused. Something Ethan had said the night before surfaced in her mind. "There are some matters we'll need to discuss, primarily about the house." The way he had said it, not defensive, not uncertain, just certain. A small unfamiliar feeling tightened in her chest. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. Margaret's expression didn't change. "Of course I'm sure." But Lauren wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking at Brandon. For once, he had stopped scrolling. His brow was slightly furrowed, eyes fixed on his phone. "What?" Margaret asked, noticing the shift. Brandon didn't answer immediately. He turned the screen toward them. "I think," he said slowly, "we might want to take a closer look at this." Lauren leaned forward. On the screen was a financial article. Not front page, not headline, but detailed, technical, and buried inside it a name, Ethan Sterling. Lauren stared at it, the words blurring for a second before snapping back into focus. It wasn't just his name. It was where it appeared, attached to something much larger than anything she had ever associated with him. Her fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the table. "That has to be a mistake," she said. But Brandon didn't look convinced, and for the first time since the night before, Margaret didn't respond right away, because she was still reading, and the silence that followed was longer than it should have been. The article wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. Lauren read the same paragraph 3 times before the words started to settle into something real. It wasn't written for people like her. It was written for investors, analysts, people who understood how numbers turned into power. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. For a newly confirmed equity stakeholder in the Foss Basin development, projected valuation exceeding $15 billion, key technical contributor to the discovery phase. Her eyes stopped on his name again, Ethan Sterling. Not buried, not accidental, placed exactly where it mattered. "That can't be him," she said, but her voice had lost the certainty it carried just minutes ago. Brandon leaned back slightly, watching her reaction. "Same name," he said. "Same field, same region. It's not exactly a common overlap." Margaret still hadn't spoken. Lauren looked up at her, expecting dismissal, correction, something to restore the structure of what they had always believed. But Margaret was still reading, and for the first time there was a fracture in her composure. Small, controlled. But there. "It doesn't mean anything yet," Margaret said finally, though her tone lacked its usual sharpness. "Names appear in filings all the time. Consultants, contractors." Lauren nodded quickly, almost too quickly. Exactly. That had to be it. Ethan worked in geology. He did surveys, field work. He had mentioned projects before in passing, in ways she hadn't paid much attention to. This could just be that a coincidence that looked bigger than it was. Brandon didn't seem convinced. He tapped the screen once. "This isn't just a mention," he said. "He's tied to the discovery phase. That's not small." Lauren's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. Discovery phase. She didn't fully understand the term, but it sounded like something that came before everything else, something foundational. Margaret straightened in her chair, folding the phone screen down as if the conversation itself needed to be controlled again. "Even if it is him," she said, measured now, deliberate, "it doesn't change the reality of the marriage." Lauren looked at her. "That's not the point," Margaret continued. "He was still absent, still uninvolved, still insufficient for the life you needed." The words landed the way they always had. Clean, certain, but this time they didn't settle the way they used to. Because something else had already begun to shift. Lauren reached for the phone again, pulling the article back up. Her eyes moved faster, now, looking for context, looking for something that would shrink this back into something manageable. Instead, she found more. References to internal filings, mentions of an LLC structure, a timeline. 3 days earlier, her breath caught slightly. 3 days. That was before the dinner, before the ring, before she had stood up and walked away like she was closing a chapter. A strange, quiet thought moved through her. He knew, not everything, but something. Something big enough that he hadn't reacted. Something big enough that he had sat there, watched her walk away and said nothing. Lauren lowered the phone slowly. "Why didn't he say anything?" she asked. More to herself than to anyone else, Brandon shrugged lightly. Why would he? If that's real, he didn't need to. Margaret's gaze sharpened again. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said. "We don't have full information." But even she didn't sound entirely convinced anymore. Lauren stood up abruptly. "I need to see him." Margaret's expression hardened immediately. "No." Lauren turned toward her. "I need to understand what this is." "What you need," Margaret replied, her voice firm again, "is to let your attorney handle it. You don't go back now, not after what you did last night." That part was true. Lauren knew it. But the truth didn't settle the feeling building in her chest. Because now there was a gap between what she thought she knew about Ethan and what might actually be true. Victor. Her mind jumped to him suddenly. To the way he had dismissed Ethan that morning. To the way he had spoken with quiet certainty about how things would unfold, as if the outcome had already been decided. Lauren's stomach tightened slightly. "What if we're wrong?" she said quietly. Margaret didn't hesitate. "We're not?" But Brandon didn't say anything. He just looked at the phone again, and that silence said more than agreement ever could. Ethan didn't leave the house that morning. He had work to do. The board confirmation came through exactly as expected, except for one detail. It wasn't a request anymore, it was scheduled, mandatory, 9:30 a.m. Central. Virtual attendance required. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, document spread out in front of him. He had already reviewed everything once, but he went through it again. Not because he doubted it, because he didn't rush things that mattered. The agreement structure was clear. His equity stake remained intact. But the operational oversight clause had been expanded. They wanted him involved in decisions earlier than planned. That meant visibility. It also meant responsibility. Ethan leaned back slightly, considering it. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, not over people, over outcomes. Over something that would exist long after any conversation about his marriage had ended. His phone buzzed once. "Olivia, everything's ready. They'll expect you to speak." Ethan read the message, then set the phone down without responding immediately. Speak. He wasn't used to that part. Not publicly, not in rooms where people expected presence, not just substance. But he understood the situation. If he stayed silent now, someone else would fill that space, and they wouldn't understand what he understood. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Decision, not reaction. He picked up the phone. "I'll be there." He sent it before he could reconsider. A small step, but a deliberate one. Across the city, Lauren stood outside Ethan's house. She hadn't planned to come. Not exactly. But the drive had happened anyway. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the front door like it might look different now. It didn't. Everything about it still said the same thing. Modest, quiet, unremarkable, just like him. Her hand hovered near the handle, then dropped. For a second, she thought about leaving, letting attorneys handle it, letting distance settle everything. Then she remembered the article, the number, the timeline. 3 days. And the way he had looked at her across that table. Not hurt, not angry, just done. Lauren took a breath and stepped forward. She reached for the door and stopped, because it opened before she touched it. Ethan stood there, already dressed, already composed. They looked at each other for a long moment, no anger, no apology, just recognition. "You read it," he said. It wasn't a question. Lauren's throat tightened slightly. "I don't understand it." Ethan nodded once. That silence stretched between them. The house behind him felt different now. Not bigger, but steadier, like something had always been there that she had never noticed. "You were going to tell me?" she asked. Ethan considered the question, then shook his head. No. The answer landed harder than anything else he could have said. Lauren took a small step back without realizing it. Why not? Ethan's expression didn't change, because it wouldn't have mattered. That wasn't what she expected. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't bitter. It was certain, and that certainty cut deeper than anger ever could. Lauren looked at him, searching for something she could push against. Something that would make this simpler. There was nothing. Behind him, on the kitchen table, his laptop screen lit up again. A notification, incoming call, Houston. Ethan glanced at it once, then back at her. "They're waiting," he said calmly. Lauren followed his gaze. Her eyes caught the name on the screen. Not a contact she recognized, but the context around it was unmistakable. This wasn't just a job. This wasn't just a project. This was something bigger, something she had walked away from without even seeing. She looked back at him, and for the first time, she didn't see the man she thought she had married. She saw the space where she had never looked closely enough. "Ethan," she started. But the call was still ringing, and this time he didn't ignore it. Ethan answered the call without stepping away from the door. "Sterling," he said, voice steady. Lauren stood just outside, close enough to hear the tone but not the words. Close enough to feel that whatever was happening on the other end mattered more than the conversation she had come here to have. On the other side, the voice was crisp, professional. Not someone asking, someone expecting. "We're all here," the man said. "Board is ready. We need your confirmation before we proceed." Ethan glanced briefly toward the kitchen table, where the laptop screen still glowed. The documents were open. Everything he needed was already in front of him. "I have reviewed the structure," Ethan replied. "I have a few conditions before I approve." Lauren's chest tightened slightly. Conditions, not questions, not uncertainty. Conditions. There was a pause on the line. "Then go ahead." Ethan spoke without raising his voice. The extraction schedule needs to follow the revised pressure modeling, not the original projection. If we push too early, you lose long-term yield. Another pause. This one longer. Someone else spoke in the background, voices shifting, recalibrating. Lauren felt it without understanding it. Authority, not loud, not performed. But there we can adjust, the first voice said carefully. Anything else? The oversight clause stays as written, Ethan continued. No delegation without my approval on Phase 1 decisions. That landed differently. Lauren saw it in the way his posture didn't change. In the way he didn't wait for permission. He wasn't being included. He was defining the terms. Understood, the voice replied. We'll update the documents. Ethan's gaze shifted back to Lauren for a second, then away again. I'll sign once the revisions are in, he said. Send them through, within the hour. The call ended. Silence filled the doorway again. Lauren didn't move, neither did Ethan. For a moment, the distance between them felt wider than the space itself. You're not just involved, she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer right away. No, he said finally, it wasn't an explanation. It was a fact. Lauren stepped inside without being invited. The house felt the same. But it didn't. There was something else now, something she couldn't ignore anymore. Her eyes moved to the laptop on the table. Numbers still on the screen, structured, complex, real. You've been doing this the whole time? She asked. Ethan shook his head slightly. Not like this, but you knew, she pressed. I understood the work, he said. I didn't know what it would turn into. Lauren let that settle. Because that part felt true. It didn't feel like a lie. And somehow that made it worse. You could have told me, she said. Ethan met her gaze. I could have, he agreed. The simplicity of it landed harder than denial would have. Then why didn't you? She asked again, voice tighter now. Ethan didn't look away. Because you weren't asking about anything that mattered. The words didn't sound cruel, but they cut. Lauren's breath caught slightly. That's not fair. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked past her into the kitchen and closed the laptop halfway, not fully, just enough to dim the screen. You asked about results, he said. Income, visibility, what it looked like from the outside. He rested one hand on the back of the chair. I was working on something that didn't look like anything yet. Lauren followed him slowly, trying to keep up with what he was saying. That's not the same as nothing, she said. No, Ethan replied. It isn't. Another silence. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't push. But the gap between what she had believed and what he had been doing was no longer abstract. It was standing in front of her. You let me believe you were. Lauren stopped herself. Ethan finished it for her. Not enough, she didn't answer. Because that was exactly what she had believed. I didn't correct you, he said. Why not? This time there was something behind her voice. Not just confusion, frustration. Ethan considered the question, then answered it honestly. Because I wanted to see if you would look past it. Lauren's expression shifted. And you didn't, he added. That part landed clean. No accusation, no anger. Just a conclusion. Lauren felt something tighten in her chest. You're making this sound like a test, she said. It wasn't a test, Ethan replied. It was just time. Time. She looked around the house again, at the life they had built. At the space she had walked out of like it didn't matter. And now she wasn't sure what she had actually left behind. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Victor. She glanced at the screen, then back at Ethan, he noticed. Of course he did. Are you going to answer that? He asked. Lauren hesitated, then declined the call. A small decision, but not a meaningless one. Ethan didn't comment. He didn't need to. What happens now? She asked. Ethan leaned back slightly against the counter. We proceed, he said. With what? The divorce, he replied. Lauren stared at him. That's it? Ethan's expression didn't change. That's what you wanted. The words were simple, direct, unavoidable. Lauren felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected. Not regret, or not fully, but something close enough that she couldn't ignore it. You're not even going to ask me to reconsider, she said quietly. Ethan shook his head once. No, no hesitation, no second thought. Just no. That hurt more than anything else he had said, because it meant he wasn't fighting for it. For them. Lauren swallowed. I didn't know, she said. The same words she had said earlier, but they sounded different now, less certain, more fragile. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. I know, he said, but there was no comfort in it, because knowing didn't change anything. Lauren took a step back. The house suddenly felt smaller, or maybe she just felt out of place in it. Her phone buzzed again. Victor, then another message. Where are you? We need to talk about next steps. Next steps. Lauren looked at the screen, then at Ethan, then back again. The contrast felt sharper now. Victor, already moving forward. Ethan standing still but somehow further ahead than she had ever realized. You're going to be in the filings, she said slowly. Yes, people are going to see this. Yes, Lauren exhaled. And you were just going to let it happen? Ethan nodded. That's how it works. Not dramatic, not strategic, just reality. Lauren looked at him again. Really looked this time, and for the first time she understood something she hadn't before. It wasn't that Ethan lacked ambition. It was that his ambition didn't need an audience. Her phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Victor. Unknown number. Houston. Lauren frowned slightly. Are you expecting that? She asked. Ethan glanced at the screen. Then at her. No, he said. The phone buzzed again, and this time she answered it. Hello? There was a brief pause on the other end, then a calm, professional voice. Is this Lauren Whitmore? Her grip tightened slightly. Yes. We're calling regarding Mr. Ethan Sterling, the voice continued. We need to confirm whether you've received the preliminary disclosure documents. His name has been flagged under marital status, and your acknowledgement may be required. Lauren's mind went still. Disclosure. Acknowledgement. Or marital status. Words she hadn't expected to hear like this. She looked at Ethan. He hadn't moved, but something in his expression had shifted. Not surprise. Recognition. Like he knew exactly what this meant. Lauren swallowed. I haven't received anything, she said. You will shortly, the voice replied. It's standard procedure when assets of this scale intersect with active marital dissolution. Assets of this scale, the call ended. Lauren lowered the phone slowly. The room felt different now, not because of what she had learned, or because of what was about to be made official. She looked at Ethan again, and this time there was no space left for assumptions. Only the realization that whatever she thought she had walked away from was about to be documented in a way she couldn't ignore, and she wasn't ready for what that would say. Lauren didn't move after the call ended. The words still echoed in her mind. Disclosure, assets of this scale. Acknowledgement required. Or this wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't a name in an article. It was legal, structured, real. She looked at Ethan again, searching for something, denial maybe, or even a trace of hesitation. There was none. He had already stepped away from the moment. Not physically, he was still there, but mentally he was somewhere else entirely, focused, deciding, preparing. Lauren felt the imbalance for the first time. Not the kind she had always believed in, where she stood above him, a different kind. One she didn't understand yet. You knew this would happen, she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He picked up his phone, glanced at a new message, then set it down again. I knew it was possible, he said. That I would find out like this? She pressed. That it would become public, he replied. How you found out wasn't something I planned. Lauren let out a breath that felt uneven. You didn't plan any of this, she said. Ethan looked at her. No, he said, and that was the part she couldn't reconcile, because everything she had done had been planned. The dinner, the speech, the timing, even the way she had slid the ring across the table. It had all been controlled, intentional, final, and now none of it felt final anymore. Lauren's phone buzzed again. Victor. She stared at the name for a moment, then answered this time, Where are you? Victor's voice came sharp, already irritated. I'm handling something, she said. What kind of something, he asked. We need to be aligned on this. Your attorney called mine. We should move fast before he complicates things. Lauren glanced at Ethan. He was already moving toward the kitchen table again, opening his laptop fully now, his attention shifting back to the documents like the conversation had already ended for him. He's not complicating anything, she said. Victor paused. What does that mean? It means he's not reacting the way you think he is, she replied. That's temporary, Victor said. Trust me. Lauren's grip tightened slightly on the phone. Trust me. The words sounded different now. Do you know anything about an oil deal? She asked. There was a beat of silence, then a small laugh. What, Ethan? She said. Do you know anything about him being involved in something like that? Victor didn't answer right away, which was answer enough. I've heard things, he said finally, tone shifting just enough, nothing confirmed. Probably exaggerated. Lauren's stomach tightened, probably. Victor, she said slowly, there are legal disclosures coming. They mentioned his name, they mentioned scale. Another pause. Longer this time. When did you hear that? Victor asked. Just now. Lauren watched Ethan as she spoke. He didn't look up, didn't react. He didn't need to. Victor exhaled quietly on the other end. Okay, he said. Then we slow down. That change was immediate, practical, calculated. Lauren felt it. Not concern for her, concern for the situation. For now, Victor continued, don't engage directly. Let's get clarity first. I'll reach out to someone I know in Houston. Someone he knew, someone with access. Lauren felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Doubt. Not about Ethan. About Victor, Lauren, he said. I heard you, she replied. Good, he said. Call me back once you know more. The call ended. Lauren lowered the phone slowly. The room felt different again, quieter. But heavier, she turned toward Ethan. You didn't tell anyone, she said. Ethan looked up briefly. No. Not even your attorney at first, she added, remembering the way the disclosure had been described. No, he repeated. Lauren frowned slightly. Why? Ethan considered the question. Because I needed to understand it before I explained it, he said. That made sense. More sense than anything else had so far. Lauren stepped closer to the table, her eyes drawn to the documents again. This isn't just money, she said. No, it's control, yes. The simplicity of ours made it harder to argue with him, harder to dismiss. Lauren rested her hand lightly on the edge of the table. And you're just sitting here, she said. Like nothing's happening, Ethan's gaze held steady. Something is happening, he said. I'm just not reacting to it the way you expect. Or that again, expectation. Lauren swallowed. You're not even angry, she said. Ethan's expression shifted just slightly, earlier. That was the first time he had admitted it. Lauren felt it, not in his voice, in what he didn't say after. What changed, she asked. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then answered. Clarity, the word settled between them. Quiet. Final. Lauren didn't know what to do with it, because clarity didn't leave room for negotiation. It didn't leave room for fixing things. It just defined them. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Victor, it was an email notification. From an address she didn't recognize. She opened it, and immediately wished she hadn't. Subject, preliminary financial disclosure, Sterling Holdings entity her breath caught. Attached documents. Multiple. She tapped one. It took a second to load. Then the numbers appeared, structured differently than the article. More precise, more detailed. Her eyes moved down the page. Equity percentage, projected revenue ranges, ownership structure. Her name appeared. Not as an owner, not as a partner, as a spouse pending dissolution. Lauren felt the room tilt slightly. This wasn't abstract anymore. This was recorded. Filed, recognized. She looked up at Ethan. This is. She couldn't finish the sentence. Ethan didn't step closer, didn't try to explain. He just watched her understand, slowly, piece by piece. Scrolled further. Her fingers moved faster now, looking for something, a mistake, a misinterpretation. Instead, she found a section labeled clearly. Separate property classification. Premarital agreement. Reference her stomach dropped. Prenup. She had signed it, years ago, reluctantly, dismissively, because at the time it hadn't mattered, because at the time she thought she understood the power dynamic. She looked up at him again. This doesn't include me, she said. Ethan shook his head once. No, the word landed harder than anything else so far. Lauren felt something crack inside her, not because of the money, because of what it meant. Everything she had assumed, everything she had acted on. It had all been built on a version of reality that didn't exist. You knew, she said again, softer this time. Yes, and you let me walk away, she added. Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes. Lauren stepped back. The distance between them felt necessary now, protective, because standing too close to him felt like standing too close to something she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Margaret. Lauren stared at the screen, then answered. Margaret said immediately, voice tight. We need to talk now. Lauren closed her eyes briefly. What is it, she asked. We received something, Margaret said. From a law office. Olivia Lawson. Lauren's grip tightened, and, she asked, there was a pause. Long enough to feel. Then Margaret spoke again. Your husband, she said slowly, carefully, is not who we thought he was. Lauren opened her eyes and looked straight at Ethan, because now it wasn't just her who knew, and whatever came next wasn't going to stay contained inside this house. Margaret didn't wait for Lauren to respond. You need to come here, she said now. Her tone wasn't the usual controlled superiority Lauren had grown up under. It was tighter, or less certain. Lauren glanced at Ethan again. He was still seated, still calm, still working, as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath their feet. "I'm not leaving yet," Lauren said. There was a pause on the other end. "You don't understand what this is," Margaret replied. Lauren's jaw tightened. Another pause. Longer this time. "We received a full legal disclosure," Margaret said slowly. "From Olivia Lawson. It outlines assets, contracts, ownership structures." Lauren said nothing. Margaret exhaled. "It's not small, Lauren, I know," Lauren said quietly. That silence landed harder than any argument. "You've seen it?" Margaret asked. "Yes. And you're still there?" Margaret's voice sharpened. Lauren looked at Ethan again. He had opened another file now. Reviewing, not reacting. "Yes," she said. Margaret didn't speak for a moment. When she did, her voice had shifted again. Less commanding, more cautious. "Then you need to listen carefully," she said. "Whatever this is, it changes the entire divorce process." Lauren's grip tightened on the phone. "It doesn't change what happened," she said. "No," Margaret replied. "But it changes what you walk away with." There it was, clear, direct, transactional. Lauren closed her eyes briefly. For years, that logic had guided everything in her life. Status, position, value. Now it sounded smaller. "I'll call you back," Lauren said, and ended the call before Margaret could respond. The room fell quiet again. Ethan finally closed his laptop. "Your mother?" he asked. Lauren nodded. "She received the disclosure," she said. "She would have," he replied. Lauren let out a breath. "She wants me to go over there, recess everything." Ethan didn't react to that word. Recess. Like this was a negotiation. Like the last few hours hadn't happened. "You're not going to stop me," she said. Ethan shook his head. No, that simple. No demand, no plea, no attempt to control the outcome. Lauren felt something shift again. "You really don't care what I decide," she said. Ethan looked at her steadily. "I care about the process being handled correctly," he said. "After that, you'll decide what you decide." Lauren felt the distance in that answer. Not cold. Not angry. Just resolved. "You're already moving on," she said. Ethan didn't deny it. "I'm moving forward," he corrected. That difference mattered. Lauren swallowed. "Victor thinks we should slow everything down," she said, testing the words as she spoke them. Ethan's expression didn't change. "That sounds like something Victor would say," he replied. Lauren frowned. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," Ethan said. "People like Victor adjust quickly when new information appears." There was no bitterness in his voice, just observation. Lauren felt a flicker of discomfort, because she realized something in that moment. Ethan understood Victor better than she did. That thought stayed with her. Unwelcome, unsettling. She stepped back from the table, creating space again. "So what happens now?" she asked. Ethan leaned back slightly in his chair. "Now," he said, "the attorneys handle the structure, disclosures, classifications, timelines, and us?" Lauren pressed. Ethan held her gaze. "That's already been decided," he said. The words landed clean, final. Lauren felt the weight of them settle in her chest. Because he wasn't asking anymore, not for explanations, not for reconsideration, not for anything. Her phone buzzed again. Victor. She asked at it for a second, then answered. "I've confirmed something," he said immediately. "No greeting, no pretense. There's a filing tied to his name. It's real." Lauren closed her eyes briefly. "How real?" she asked. "Real enough that we need to be careful," Victor replied. "This isn't just a contract, it's equity, long-term, structured income." Lauren's grip tightened. "I saw the disclosure," she said. "Then you understand the risk," Victor said. "Risk." Lauren glanced at Ethan, still calm, still steady, still not treating this like a crisis. "What exactly are you suggesting?" she asked. Victor didn't hesitate. "You don't finalize anything yet," he said. "You hold attorney negotiate. There may be leverage we can use." Lauren felt something twist inside her. "Leverage? Against him?" she asked. "Yes," Victor said simply. Lauren's eyes stayed on Ethan. He wasn't listening, or maybe he was, and just didn't care. "He has a prenup," she said quietly. Victor paused. "That complicates things," he admitted. "It eliminates things," Lauren corrected. Another silence. Then Victor's voice shifted, sharper now. "Then we find another angle." Lauren felt it clearly this time. Not strategy, not partnership, calculation, pure and simple. And suddenly she could see it, the way Ethan had seen everything, before she had. "I'll call you later," she said, and ended the call. The quiet that followed was different. Heavier, more honest. Lauren set her phone down slowly. "You were right about him," she said. Ethan looked up. "About Victor." Ethan didn't smile, didn't react beyond a small shift in his posture. "I wasn't trying to be right," he said. Lauren let out a breath. "I know," and she did. That was the part that hurt the most. He hadn't been competing. He hadn't been trying to win. He had just seen things clearly. She walked toward the window, looking out at the street. Everything looked the same, normal, unchanged, but it wasn't. None of it was. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked suddenly. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. "Because I didn't want to find out if it would matter," he said. Lauren turned slowly. "And now you know," she said. Yes, the answer was simple, certain. Lauren felt something tighten in her chest. Not anger, not even regret, fully. Something closer to recognition. "I would have made the same decision," she said after a moment. Ethan didn't argue. "I know," he said. That agreement landed harder than any accusation, because it meant he had never misunderstood her. He had just accepted what she was. Lauren looked down at her hands, at the absence of the ring, at the choice she had made, and for the first time it didn't feel like control, it felt like exposure. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Margaret or Victor. It was a message from an unknown number, short, direct. Board meeting scheduled, Meridian Energy Partners, Houston. Attendance requested, Sterling entity approval required. Lauren stared at the screen, then slowly looked up at Ethan. Because for the first time, she wasn't the one being invited into the room. Lauren didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on Ethan, but the message on her phone burned in her hand like something alive. Board meeting. Attendance requested. Sterling entity approval required. It wasn't just money, it was authority. Decision-making, control. And for the first time since she had slid that ring across the table, Lauren felt something she hadn't expected. Not regret. Not yet. Uncertainty. "You're needed in Houston," she said slowly. Ethan didn't reach for the phone. He didn't even ask to see it. "I assumed that would happen," he replied. Lauren blinked. "You already knew?" she asked. "I knew they would move quickly once the filing was public," he said. "There are timelines attached to projects like that." Projects. He said it like this was normal, like being summoned to a boardroom over something worth billions was just part of the week. Lauren stared at him. "You're not surprised at all," she said. Ethan looked at her, calm as ever. No, that answer landed heavier than anything else, because it meant this wasn't new for him. It just wasn't visible. Lauren swallowed. "And they need your approval," she asked. "Yes, just one word, no explanation, no performance." Lauren let out a quiet breath. "So if you don't show up?" "They wait," Ethan said, "or they restructure. Either way, nothing moves without the agreement being finalized." Lauren felt the shift clearly now. Not in tone, not in posture, but in reality. For years, she had believed she was building towards something bigger, a better life, better connections, better opportunities. And now she was standing in front of a man who had been holding something far beyond all of that without ever needing to prove it. Her phone buzzed again. Victor. She didn't answer this time. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked instead. Ethan leaned back slightly. "Because it wasn't finished," he said. "And because it wasn't relevant to anything outside the work." Lauren shook her head. "That's not how people think," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. That quiet agreement made her chest tighten, because she realized something uncomfortable. He hadn't been unaware of how people saw him. He had just chosen not to respond to it. Lauren walked slowly back to the table, placing her phone down next to his laptop. "You understand what this looks like, right?" she said. Ethan waited. "It looks like you've been hiding," she said. Ethan's expression didn't change. "I've been working," he corrected. The distinction was small, but it mattered, Lauren exhaled. "To everyone else, it's the same thing," she said. "Then everyone else is wrong," Ethan replied. Simple, direct, no apology in it. Lauren stared at him, and for a moment she didn't recognize the dynamic anymore, not because he had changed, because she was finally seeing him without the assumptions she had built over years. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Margaret. Again, Lauren hesitated, then answered. "You need to get ahead of this," Margaret said immediately. No greeting. No pause. "I've spoken to Brandon. We've reviewed the disclosure again." Lauren closed her eyes briefly. "And?" she asked. "And this is not something you walk away from without strategy," Margaret said. "You need to reconsider the divorce timeline." Lauren looked at Ethan again. Still calm, still waiting. "Reconsider how?" Lauren asked. "You don't finalize anything," Margaret said. "You delay, you negotiate. There are always angles." Lauren felt something inside her tighten. "There's a prenup," she said. Margaret paused. "Then we find pressure somewhere else," she replied. Lauren's grip on the phone tightened. Pressure against him. The same man who hadn't raised his voice once, who hadn't argued, who hadn't tried to control anything. Mom, Lauren said quietly, this isn't a negotiation. It's always a negotiation, Margaret snapped. Lauren flinched slightly, not at the volume, at the certainty. You don't understand what you're giving up, Margaret continued. Do you have any idea what people would do to be in your position right now? Lauren's eyes stayed on Ethan. Yes, she was starting to understand, and that was exactly the problem. I'll call you back, Lauren said, and ended the call again. She stood there for a long moment, silent, thinking. Then finally, what happens if I don't delay? She asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. Then we proceed, he said. And you don't care? She pressed. Ethan looked at her carefully. I care about doing this correctly, he said. Not about changing your decision. Lauren felt the weight of that, because it meant something very clear. He wasn't trying to win her back, not even now, not even after everything had shifted. Her phone buzzed again. Victor, this time, she answered. We need to talk, he said immediately. In person. Lauren glanced at Ethan. About what? She asked. I've been digging into the filings, Victor said. There's more to this than what you've seen. There's a holding structure tied to his name. If that's real, it changes everything. Lauren's stomach tightened. I've seen enough, she said. No, Victor replied sharply. You haven't, not yet. Trust me on this, trust. The word landed wrong. Lauren looked at Ethan again. Quiet, steady, unmoved. I'll meet you later, she said, and hung up. She set her phone down slowly. You're not going to ask who that was, she said. I know who it was, Ethan replied. Lauren nodded once. Of course he did. Victor wants to meet, she said. That makes sense, Ethan said. Lauren frowned. That's all you're going to say? Ethan shrugged slightly. People tend to reassess their positions when new information appears, he said. The same calm observation, the same clarity. Lauren studied him. You really don't think he cares about me, she said. Ethan didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was measured. I think he cares about what you represented, he said. The words hit harder now, because she was starting to see it herself. Lauren looked away, toward the window, toward the city outside. Everything felt different. Not because of the money, because of the truth behind it. For the first time, she wasn't sure who had actually been in control this entire time. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call, it was an email notification from Olivia Lawson. Lauren hesitated, then opened it. Subject: updated disclosure addendum. Urgent review required. Her fingers tightened slightly as she scrolled. More documents, more details, more numbers. And then one line stopped her completely. Primary approval authority remains exclusively with Ethan Sterling. Lauren's breath caught. She looked up slowly, at the man sitting across from her, quiet, composed, untouched by everything that was unraveling around him. And for the first time she realized something far more dangerous than money. He wasn't just some part of the deal, he was the one everyone else was waiting for. Lauren didn't speak right away. Her eyes stayed on the screen, on that single line that had rewritten everything she thought she understood. Primary approval authority remains exclusively with Ethan Sterling. It didn't just confirm what Victor had hinted at, it made it undeniable. Ethan wasn't just involved. He was the decision. She lowered the phone slowly. You're the one they're waiting on, she said. Ethan didn't react. I told you that, he replied. Lauren shook her head slightly. No, she said. You didn't, because he hadn't explained it. He had just lived it quietly, without making it part of he presented himself to the world. Lauren took a step back, needing space again. The room felt smaller now, not because of him, because of what she had missed. For years, her phone buzzed again. Victor, again. She stared at it longer this time, then finally answered. I saw the addendum, she said before he could speak. There was a pause on the line, then Victor's voice came back, sharper. Then you understand why we need to move carefully, he said. Lauren looked at Ethan, still calm, still not trying to control anything. What exactly are you trying to do, she asked. Victor didn't hesitate. Protect your position, he said. There's too much at stake now to just walk away. Lauren's grip tightened. My position, she repeated. Yes, still his wife, that matters. The words landed wrong, not because they were incorrect, because of how they were said. Lauren glanced at Ethan again. For the first time she saw the difference clearly. Victor saw leverage. Ethan had never once treated her like one. There's a prenup, she said. I know, Victor replied, but those things aren't always airtight. There are ways, no, Lauren cut in. The word came out sharper than she expected. Victor paused. He said carefully, "You're not thinking strategically right now." Lauren exhaled slowly. "No," she said. "I'm thinking clearly for the first time." Silence. Then Victor's tone shifted. More controlled, more deliberate. "You're emotional," he said. "That's understandable. But don't make a decision you can't undo." Lauren looked at Ethan again, at the man who hadn't raised his voice, hadn't asked her to stay, or hadn't used anything against her. "Even now I already did," she said quietly, and ended the call. The silence that followed felt different, not heavy, not tense, just real. Lauren set her phone down. Her hands weren't shaking. That surprised her, because everything else felt like it should be. "You're not going to stop me from talking to him," she said. Ethan shook his head. "No." That same answer again. No code control, no interference. Lauren let out a breath. "That used to feel like indifference," she said. Ethan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. "It was respect," he said. Lauren felt that. Deep, uncomfortable, because she hadn't recognized it when it mattered. She walked back to the table and sat down across from him, for the first time since the restaurant. Not as someone standing above him or walking away, just sitting. "You knew about Victor," she said. "Yes." "You knew about my family pushing me," she continued. "Yes, and you still stayed," she said. Ethan held her gaze. "For a while," he said. Lauren swallowed. "Why?" Ethan looked down briefly, then back up. "Because I thought you might eventually see me," he said. The words were simple, but they hit harder than anything else. Lauren looked away, because she knew the answer. She hadn't. Not really. Not past what she had already decided he was worth. "I thought I did," she said quietly. Ethan didn't argue. "I know," he replied. That was the worst part. He believed her, even now. Lauren pressed her lips together. "I wasn't building a life with you," she said slowly. "I was trying to shape you into something else." Ethan didn't move. "I know," he said again. No anger, no accusation, just acknowledgement. Lauren let out a breath that felt heavier than it should have. And when that didn't work, she continued. "You replaced it," Ethan finished. Lauren closed her eyes briefly. Yes, the honesty sat between them. Uncomfortable, but clean. For the first time in a long time, her phone buzzed again. This time, she ignored it. She already knew who it would be. Victor or Margaret or both. The same voices, the same subasnis, only now she could see it clearly. "You're not even angry," she said. Ethan leaned back slightly. "I was," he said for a while. "And now?" she asked. Ethan paused, then answered carefully. "Now I'm done," he said. Lauren felt something shift again, not a rejection, something quieter, more fine. He wasn't pushing her away. He had just stepped out. That difference mattered, more than anything. She looked down at her hands again, at the absence of the ring, at the choice she had made, and for the first time it didn't feel powerful, it felt irreversible. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up, not to answer, to silence it, but as the screen lit up, something else caught her eye, a message preview. Not from Victor, not from Margaret, from an unknown contact, short, direct, "We need confirmation. Without Sterling's approval, the board will not proceed." Lauren froze. Her eyes moved slowly back to Ethan. He hadn't seen the message, or maybe he had, and just didn't react. Because he didn't need to. For the first time, Lauren understood the full weight of it. This wasn't just about what she had lost. It was about what she had walked away from, without even realizing it existed. And now, everyone else was waiting on the man she had just tried to replace. The divorce was finalized on a gray morning that didn't feel important enough for what it represented. No raised voices, no dramatic speeches, just signatures reviewed and confirmed by lawyers who spoke in careful, neutral tones. The prenup held exactly as it had been written years earlier, clean, precise, unemotional. Lauren sat across the table quieter than she had ever been, not broken, just aware. Ethan didn't look at her for long. There was no anger left to carry, or no need to prove anything. The process moved forward the way it was supposed to, guided by structure instead of emotion. When it was over, she spoke first. "I didn't understand what I was losing," she said. Ethan paused, then nodded once. "I know," he replied. There was nothing else to add, because anything more would have been about the past, and neither of them lived there anymore. Lauren didn't ask him to stay. She didn't ask for another chance. That part of her had already been confronted and answered in the weeks before this moment. What she had done couldn't be reframed. What he had chosen couldn't be undone. They stood at the same table, two people who had once shared a life, now separated not just by a legal document but by clarity. Ethan picked up his folder. Take care of yourself, he said. It wasn't cold, it wasn't warm, it was honest. Lauren nodded. You too. He walked out without looking back. And for the first time, she didn't follow. Life didn't transform overnight. It shifted quietly. Ethan didn't move into something extravagant. He didn't chase visibility. He didn't try to correct anyone's assumptions about him. He just stopped living inside them. The Houston deal continued forward. The board meetings came and went. His role became clearer to the people who needed to know and invisible to everyone else. That was how he preferred it. He approved what needed approval, declined what didn't align, spoke only when his voice mattered. The power had always been there. Now it simply didn't need to hide, but he still didn't use it to rewrite the past. Months later, he stood outside a modest building in downtown Austin, watching as a small group gathered near the entrance. No press, no cameras. Just a few local organizers, a couple of board members, and a woman standing near the door, reviewing a list on a clipboard. Elena Vasquez looked up when she saw him. You're early, she said, a faint smile forming. Ethan shrugged slightly. I like knowing how things start, he replied. She nodded like that made sense, because with him it usually did. Elena wasn't impressed by titles. She hadn't asked about his background when they first met during a funding review weeks earlier. She had focused on the project, the numbers, the people it would affect, and when she spoke like someone who expected to be heard, that had caught his attention. Not because it was rare, because it was real. You didn't have to come in person, she said, glancing toward the entrance again. Ethan followed her gaze. I wanted to, he said. That was the truth. The scholarship program wasn't about visibility. It wasn't a statement to anyone who had doubted him. It wasn't revenge, disguised as generosity. It was quiet, intentional. A structure that would give people access to something they didn't have to prove themselves worthy of first. Opportunity without performance, respect without conditions. Elena handed him a document. Final confirmations, she said. Just signatures left. Ethan looked it over, briefly. Everything aligned. It had been built the way it was supposed to be. Carefully. Without shortcuts, he signed. Not as a spectacle, just as a decision. Elena watched him for a second longer than necessary. You don't talk much about what you do, she said. Ethan handed the document back. There's not much to say, he replied. She raised an eyebrow slightly. That's not true, she said. You just don't feel the need to explain it, he considered that. Then nodded. Maybe, he admitted. Elena studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. That's rare, she said. Ethan didn't respond. Because he wasn't trying to be anything, not anymore. Across the city, Lauren stood in a smaller office than the one she used to have. Not empty, just different. The Whitmore name still carried weight, but not the same kind. Victor had stepped back months earlier when the deal shifted in a direction he couldn't control. The partnerships he had relied on had dissolved quietly once the structure became clear. Lauren had stayed, not because it was easy, because leaving wouldn't fix anything. She worked longer hours now, paid closer attention, listened more than she spoke. Not to rebuild what she had, but to understand hadn't. Sometimes, late at night, she would think about the restaurant, the ring, the moment she believed she was choosing something better, and the silence that followed. She didn't call Ethan. Not anymore. Because she finally understood the difference between regret and entitlement. One asked for forgiveness. The other expected it. She carried the first, and left the second behind. Ethan stood at the edge of the small gathering as people began to move inside. Elena was speaking with someone near the door, her voice steady, focused. He watched for a moment, not because he needed to, because he wanted to remember what this felt like. No performance, no expectation, just being present. For the first time in a long time, nothing in his life required him to prove anything to anyone. Not his worth, not his success, not his identity. He had it, quietly, completely, and that was enough. Elena turned and gestured for him to join. Ethan walked toward the entrance, not as someone stepping into something new, but as someone who had finally stepped out of everything that wasn't his and didn't look back. What would you have done if you were him, and would you have said anything at all?